Hello and welcome to On Preaching, a podcast of homilies from St. John Chrysostom Parish. Today, Father Ed Hallinan reflects on Matthew chapter 13, verses 1 to 23. The Gospel reading for Sunday, July 12th, 2026.
Welcome, everyone. I'm going to take you back to September of 1975. I'm an 18-year-old kid, and I applied to the seminary, was accepted at the seminary. The priest at my parish said to me, Ed, he goes, when you go to the seminary, I want you to stay for 2 years. And I said, why 2 years? He goes, the first year is like a culture shock. The routine that you're going to have, the academics that you're going to have, the spiritual things that you're going to have, it's going to be an awkward year. The second year, you know what you're going into, and if by chance you say, this isn't for me, transfer over to St. Joe's as a junior, and you'll be in good shape. So here, one of the things that they do when you go in is that, I always attended Sunday Mass, and you go into the seminary, they have Mass every day. You have Mass every day. Well, you're used to going to school, used to working, playing sports, going to Mass on Sunday. Oh, God, I'm going to Mass like every, day. That was an adjustment. And you're wearing a dress. You don't really like wearing the dress. It's a black cassock with a white thing. And so thank God you only had to wear it when you went into the chapel for Mass or benediction. Otherwise, you could just be in a black clerical shirt. So here I'm going to Mass, every day. And all of a sudden, it hits me one day. Do you know what the first reading was? I'm sitting there. I don't know where the first reading was from. Do you know what the gospel was about? God, I don't know what the gospel was about. And so I said to myself, what's going on? And so here I would be standing for the gospel and had my hands on the pew, and I was in charge of sports for my first 4 years. So I got my eyes closed because I'm trying to listen to what's being said, and I'm like, do I have enough referees for the basketball game? Are the soccer nets up, and is there adequate air in the soccer balls? Is the, what do you call it, the one where you jump over the net? Volleyball, not soccer. We didn't do soccer back then. It was like volleyball. Football, do we have enough footballs and whatever? And then the gospel of the Lord, then you sit down and you rest, okay? And but those were the things that were going through my head, and I might have had like attention deficit syndrome or something like that. But again, we didn't have that back then. So, or we did, but we didn't know we had it, okay? We had it, but we didn't know we had it. So anyway, you go see a priest like every 4 to 8 weeks. He's called the spiritual director. You can talk to him about anything, and it stays under the seal. You talk about getting married, talk about wanting to have kids, and how do I work all these things out, and whatever. So here I go to this guy and I said, I've been wanting to tell you this for about 2 or 3 years. But I just sort of felt awkward. When I'm at Mass, I find it really hard to tune into the readings because my mind is everywhere else but the Mass. So he sort of laughed, and he said, do you know this is an 8-year program you're on? And he goes, one of the reasons that it's an 8-year program is because it takes you 8 years to just sort of get it down basically. He goes, this is a lifelong journey here of prayer, spirituality, and a relationship with God. So I said to him, well, what do I do so I can try to be more in tune with what's going on at Mass, other than hoping it ends quick so we can get down to the courts. So, again, I'm just being honest of what it was like. So he says to me, do you know what a lectionary is? And I said, is that where all the readings that we read from? Yeah, that. He goes, I want you to buy one of those for yourselves. So I said, okay, all right, good. He goes, every night before you go to bed, I want you to read the first reading. I want you to read the gospel so that you have them in your head. Then, when you're at Mass and you're sitting for the first reading, and let's say your mind drifts off here or there, you hear a word, you hear a sentence that you read the night before, and all of a sudden, the reading clicks in your head. You're standing for the gospel. You read the gospel the night before. You may be in tune with it as soon as they start, but let's say that you're not, and it's halfway through, and you're like, oh God, I got to pay attention. And because you read it the night before, it sort of comes back to you. Okay, all right, why am I telling you that crazy beginning that I had at the seminary? The seed that we hear in today's gospel. It falls on cement, it falls on rocky ground, it falls on good soil. Jesus was throwing the seed at me, and it was landing on cement. And being that it was landing on cement, I wasn't even conscious of it at all. Then Jesus continues to throw seed at me, and it's on some dirt, but some rocky ground and some thorns and little trees that's eating it up. It gets a little, but then it sort of dies out. And then finally, it falls on rich soil that welcomes the seed. I think all of us that come to Mass have times when we're like the cement and God's throwing seeds of love at us, but they're just blowing like all over the place. Then we may be at a point where our life is somewhat good and God is throwing the seed at us, and a little bit is taken, a couple sprouts are coming up, but then the sun comes out, people walk on it, it dissipates. And then sometimes we get to a point where our heart has rich soil, and we are in tune with the readings, with the words of Jesus, and they begin to bear fruit in your lives. So I want you to know, if you're like sitting there and saying, Father, I forget what the first and second reading were today, all right? And I know a lot of you have the missalettes, which is great, because that helps you to stay focused, on what is being proclaimed. God never gives up on us, never. In fact, if we're the pavement or we're sort of rocky ground, he just orders an extra ton of seed for us, okay? But it's so important that we know, because sometimes we feel like when we hear that reading, God, how often am I the rich soil? And we think, I'm not the rich soil all the time. Well, no, we're not the rich soil all the time. Does that mean God turns his back on us? They're not rich soil. He just completely bombards us with the seeds of the Word of God and his love until it begins to take root. And he's watering us every night so that we grow in the love of God. We grow in love for one another. That's what God is always about. So if you say to yourself, how's your spiritual life on a 1 to 10? Back in those days, I would say I'm like 0 to 0.5. Okay? All right? But the thing is, he's like fine. It's like your kids learning to walk. You know what I mean? You see them get up, you see them stumble, get up, see them stumble, they hurt their head, all this stuff. You're there to love them, to embrace them, to put a Band-Aid, Neosporin on them, tell them to keep on going. That's how God is with us. That's how God is with each and every one of us. that are in this church. So if you're sitting there, sometimes people say to me, I feel so distant from God. You know, and I said, he's right next to you. He's actually in you. So don't feel, like say that you feel it, and let's talk about it. But like God is always right there, loving whatever stage that we're at, and just constantly throwing the seeds of his word, the seeds of his love and mercy. He's constantly tossing it our way. God bless you.
Unpreachy is a production of St. John Chrysostom Parish in Wallingford, Pennsylvania. Visit us at sjcparish.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. This podcast was produced by Brendan Lorden with music by Skytoes on Upbeat. Thanks for listening. Be well.